Lyndon Johnson was president, and the King of Morocco came for a state visit, and this is official because the people were all lined up on Pennsylvania Avenue, and they had the motorcade proceeding, and the president was in the motorcade, and I was on duty at the top of the steps in the Lincoln Room. Now that's where, I don't know why, Lincoln liked to stay there, and he used it as his little office when he was in that area, but it was designated the Security and Protocol Office, and we were right at the top of the steps, just to the right. Well, the motorcade came with the king and the president and Secret Service and the U.S. ambassador to Morocco, the Moroccan ambassador to the United States, the chief of protocol, and the new chief of protocol was Jimmy Symington. And he was the son of the senior senator from Missouri, Stuart Symington. Now, during the Johnson administration, or even during the Eisenhower administration, there was 4 men on Capitol Hill that were so powerful: Stuart Symington, Mike Mansfield, Sam Rayburn, and Lyndon Johnson. They ran the country, and Eisenhower was busy doing other things. Exciting time being on an 8-4 in the Blair House with the King of Morocco. So they all came up the steps and walked past me, and what did? They turned right, and they all jammed into the little office where the security and protocol setup was, and they closed the door. The king, the president, the Secret Service, the chief of protocol, the U.S. ambassadors, the Moroccan ambassadors, they all jammed in this little room. And the president talked a little bit through an interpreter because he doesn't speak Arabic naturally, but it took a long time to say things. And then the president says, well, he said, you go ahead and get cleaned up and come on over to the house for lunch. Well, at that time, he turned and he said to Jimmy Symington, who was the brand new presidential chief of protocol of the United States working in the State Department. He got appointed because Lyndon Johnson received a call from his father in the Capitol and said, Lyndon, my boy needs a job. And the president said, and this is what the guys in the detail told me, what does he do? And Senator Simon says, well, he doesn't do anything. He says, he plays the guitar. And the president was kind of taken aback, and he said, well, send him over. We'll see what we can do. So Jimmy Symington came to the White House. The president interviewed him for the chief of protocol job, and he gave it to him. He was the rank of ambassador and chief of protocol of the United States. And this Moroccan visit of the king was the first function that he ever had participated in. And he was in the room with us. And I was I couldn't believe this. I'm surrounded by all this power, right, and jammed into our office. And the president said to the king, well, go ahead and get cleaned up and come on over for lunch, you know. And he turned to the chief of protocol of the United States, Jimmy Symington, his first job, and he says, okay, Jimmy, let's go. And he says, right this way, Mr. President. And he walked over and opened the door to the closet. The closet. And the president looked and the king looked, and you could see the steam coming out of Johnson's ears. And I ran over and opened up the door to the stairwell into the lobby, and I could just see him unraveling Symington's cummerbund from his tux, you know. But he stayed on. He became very successful in the job. And he did play his guitar at the Christmas party, and he did become a United States congressman. So he ended up very well, and this was his first experience, and I couldn't help it. I was holding back from laughing when he opened the door to the closet. The Chancellor of Germany, and LBJ invited him down to the ranch for a weekend barbecue. But as I recall, my first opportunity to see the president's ranch, and he had a airstrip built behind the ranch to land the 707 Air Force One on his own property, so he could fly right to his house. And every time he entertained, he would invite the piano player from Dallas, Van Cliburn, to play the piano during luncheons or dinners. And he had a piano put on the veranda for Van Cliburn to play. And I'll never forget, the guests, Dean Rusk was Secretary of State, Robert McNamara was Secretary of Defense, and they were sleeping in the bunkhouse. And they went in there, and there's a top bunk and a lower bunk. and who's going to sleep in the top bunk? So Dean Rusk and Bob McNamara flipped a coin to see who was have to sleep in the top bunk. And Rusk won. He slept on the lower bunk. And Bob McNamara had to climb up the ladder and sleep in the top bunk. Prime Minister of Canada at the time was Lester Pearson. And he was an older gentleman and well known as a world statesman. He was quite popular and very effective as a world statesman. But he came on a visit, a state visit, and the president invited him down to the LBJ Ranch for a barbecue weekend. And so we're on the helicopter, and I'm going to take off because I'm with the prime minister, and Lem Johns was with the president. And then they got on the helicopter, and I'm standing just outside the door with the Secret Service agent. I'm with the prime minister, and the president looked out the window, that big window they have living room furniture, beautiful chairs, and he looked out and saw the two dogs that Lyndon Johnson had, two beagle dogs. He called it him and her, I think. He didn't even have a name. But he got criticized in the press for picking him up by the back of the neck, and that's how you pick up a beagle, by the back of the neck. Anyway, the president unbuckles and leaned out and said, Lem, put the dogs on the airplane. The blades were going around. They was just starting up, and the dogs were running all over the place. And Lem looked at me, and he rolled his eyes, and he went over, and he caught the dogs, brought them back, put them on the helicopter, and slammed the door shut. Well, the president went over, sat down, and got buckled up. The prime minister sitting right opposite him. And he looked out on the lawn, and there's the dogs again, barking out on the grass outside the helicopter. He jumped up, and he ran over, and he pulled the door back. He said, damn it, Lem, I said put the dogs on the airplane. Lem did put them on, and they ran to the back and got off the baggage hatch and jumped out again. So they're outside, and when the president sat down, he was really mad because he thought Lem didn't do what he asked. The Prime Minister of Canada laughed, and it was a good time. It was a different time.
This has been a DS Public Affairs Oral History with former Special Agent Lou Diener.